Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan. And it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest.
I watched as people jumped, and I watched the second plane come in parts of New Jersey, Jersey City, but parts of New Jersey. I saw people getting together and in fairly large numbers celebrating as the World Trade Center was coming down. I watched our police and our firemen down in 7-Eleven, down the World Trade Center right after it came down. Everyone who helped clear the rubble. And I was there, and I watched, and I helped a little bit.
Remembering the 1993 World Trade Center bombing exactly 30 years later, Fox 5's Christine Russo has more from Lower Manhattan, where survivors, first responders, and victims' families members gathered today.
It's been 30 years since the first terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, which killed 6 people, an unborn child, and injured more than 1,000 others. The lives lost honored today at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum downtown.
30 years, it's never easy.
The attack happened on the afternoon of February 26, 1993. When a rented van parked in an underground garage exploded, years before the second terrorist attack on 9/11.
We are having some technical difficulties, which is totally understandable when you try to do ad hoc reporting and getting information to you as fast as we possibly can and making sure that it's accurate at the same time. So
Donald Trump is on the line. I mean, we know him as the man behind lots of real estate in Manhattan. And of course, Donald, I understand you were actually a witness to what happened this morning.
Well, I have a window that looks directly at the World Trade Center, and I saw this huge explosion. I was with a group of people, and I really couldn't even believe it. And even, I think, worse than that, for years I've looked right directly at the building. I'd see the Empire State Building in the foreground and the World Trade Center in the background, and now I'm looking at absolutely nothing. It's just gone, and it's just hard to believe. Well, it was an architectural defect. You know, the World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation, and it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place, because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid, and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
Looking like a Three Stooges movie covered in plastic, I swear to God. But you get a good thing, right? That's some good shit. Then we went back there. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm on the AE911truth.org website, one that was created by architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And I'm going to quickly read over 2 subheadings and 2 excerpts. About World Trade Center 7, Building 7 was destroyed in the manner of a classic implosion, falling suddenly, symmetrically, and in absolute freefall into its own footprint. About the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers were destroyed by waves of explosions that pulverized the building contents and hurled steel beams up to 600 feet in all directions.
BuzzFeed dug up an old quote from Donald Trump talking about a large-scale terror attack 19 months before 9/11. In his 2000 book, The America We Deserve, Trump wrote, "I really am convinced we're in danger of the sort of terrorist attacks that will make the bombing of the 1993 Trade Center look like little kids playing with firecrackers." Trump also mentioned the mastermind of the attack, writing, quote, "One day, we're told that a shadowy figure with no fixed address named Osama bin Laden is public enemy number one, and U.S. jet fighters lay waste to his camp in Afghanistan. He escapes back under some rock, and a few news cycles later, it's on to a new enemy and a new crisis." Trump.
Wait.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on a second. Mm-hmm. Is this really Trump before 9/11? Have you read this?
It's 2000 in his book.
Are we making this? Did you make this up, Mika?
Nick.
I did.
Did you make this up?
Yeah,
Nick,
exactly.
tell us it's over, right? Because
Will
you're
you
wrong
stop?
about everything.
Mika, stop. God.
I don't think it's over.
What's that? What's the rage here? Will you stop
No,
picking
it's
on
cute.
him?
I think it's cute.
Well,
go for it.
No, really quickly, though. I mean, so Willie, that was
2000.
2000.
In a book he wrote in the year 2000. Yeah.
Well, it was published in 2000. He could have written it in 1999 for all we know.
Exactly. He might have been a bit more prescient.
So he basically predicted the attacks from Osama bin Laden.
I'm on Donald Trump's Twitter page, which was recently reinstated by Elon Musk when he bought Twitter and changed its name to X Corp. And so I'm going to read you a tweet that Donald Trump tweeted on December 29, 2011. I predicted the 9/11 attack on America in my book, The America We Deserve, and the collapse of Iraq in A Time to Get Tough. Here's another tweet that Donald Trump tweeted on September 11, 2013. At The Real Donald Trump, I would like to extend my best wishes to all, even the haters and losers, on this special date, September 11. I don't want to spend too much time here on this video. I would just like to note that Barry Soetoro, also known as Barack Hussein Obama, signed the One World Trade Center memorial beam exactly on Donald Trump's 66th birthday on June 14, 2012. I often get asked about my views on Barack Obama, and I tell people that I believe Barack Obama is simply one of Donald Trump's minions, just like Joe Biden. I believe Donald Trump is Barack's handler, his Freemasonic handler, as well as Joe Biden's Freemasonic handler.
Alan, we've always had, as you know, very, very strong security, but there's very little you can do about planes crashing into a building. I mean, you look at Larry Silverstein, who's a terrific owner in New York and a very good friend of mine who I just called. I was very worried about him because I assumed maybe he was in the building. He took possession of the building 1 week ago. As you know, he just bought the World Trade Center.
Right.
And he was in his office, and he was getting ready to move into the World Trade Center over the next 2 weeks. So when I just spoke to him, there's nothing you can do when people are going to be bombing planes at your building. Now,
Here he is, Mr. Larry Silverstein, Trump's alleged very good friend. He's an American businessman, a real estate project developer, the man who was responsible for the rebuilding of the One World Trade Center, the singular building that looks like a syringe, a needle. He resides in Lower Manhattan, New York City, and he was interested in acquiring the original World Trade Center complex and put in a bid when the Port Authority put it up for lease in 2000. He won the bid when a deal between the initial winner and the Port Authority fell through, and he signed the lease on July 24, 2001.
And then how do you decide to bid to buy the Trade Center site?
Well, interestingly, I remember in 1987, as the building at 7 World Trade Center was nearing completion, I remember at the topping out ceremony, looking up at the Twin Towers and said to myself, my God, if they ever decide to sell those, wouldn't that be fantastic to own the Twin Towers? And when the Port Authority decided to get out of the ownership of the Twin Towers in '99, they approached us along with many others. I think there were something like 27 qualified, maybe 34 qualified bidders. We were one of them. And by 2000, early 2000, we became one of 5 finalists. And that process moved on into 2001.
Right. And then subsequently, because we only have a couple more minutes, you have the opportunity, you lose, you're really out of it.
We lost the site.
You bid $3.2 billion.
Correct.
It was $3.2 billion, $50 million.
$3.25 billion was bid by Vornado.
And then Vornado says to you, hey, you know how to deal with the Port Authority better than I do, and they leave. And then it's 7 weeks before the tragic events of 9/11.
That's correct.
Over there,
we closed at 7. We closed at the 26th day of July, and in September the 1st of 2001. Right. We all know what happened.
And
here we are.
Because I only have 2 minutes left, I really want to. And then you're moving your office down there.
We're moving our office. That's
right,
correct.
and your son and daughter are
on their way down.
Are down, and then fortunately, or unfortunately, you have your skin. You go to the dermatologist. Clara says to you, you got to go to the dermatologist on 9/11. You say, I'm not going to the dermatologist. I always go to the Windows of the World. That was a very fortuitous situation.
Well, business meetings, and that was my first obligation, was to negotiate leases with my tenants. But that morning, fortunately, she made the dermatologist appointment for me. I couldn't go, and she saved my life.
We have 2 minutes left, but the real key is, after 7 falls down, you build once again on spec this magnificent new building, which last week was awarded an award for the greatest new building in 2005. And it's on spec. And you constantly have always done that. Tell me a little bit about the new 7.
Well, the new 7 is a little bit smaller than the old. It's taller, but the floor sizes are only 40,000 feet as opposed to 47,000. It's a much more beautiful building. This one's designed by David Childs of Skidmore. It's a glass curtain wall building. It's spectacularly, I think it's very attractive.
I'm on the New York Times website. Insurers agree to pay billions at ground zero. Let's look at the image. Announcing the deal were from left Albert M. Rosenblatt, a retired judge, Governor Elliot Spitzer, Anthony E. Shorris, New York Port Authority Executive Director, and Larry A. Silverstein, the developer. Before I read the beginning of the article, I would just like to note that Mr. Larry A. Silverstein actually won his bid for the World Trade Center complex, which came with 4 buildings. The North Tower building, the South Tower building, World Trade Center 7, and a fourth building. The fourth building wasn't demolition like the other three. So he won the entire complex for $3.22 billion. I repeat, $3.22 billion. The Spitzer administration announced the settlement of all insurance claims at ground zero yesterday, ensuring that $4.55 billion will be available for rebuilding the World Trade Center site. And that's exactly what Silverstein did with his insurance claim funds. I'm back on the New York Times website. Developer sues to win $12.3 billion in 9/11 attack. So Larry Silverstein already won a huge $4.6 billion insurance settlement, which he used the funds to rebuild his World Trade Center complex by rebuilding the One World Trade Center building, the one that looks like a needle or a syringe. If that wasn't enough, he filed another lawsuit and he sought $12.3 billion in damages from airline companies and airport security companies for the 9/11 attack. If that isn't the definition of greed, then I'm not sure what is. This article also goes on to describe how Silverstein won a 99-year lease on a bid worth $3.2 billion on 4 buildings at the World Trade Center site. And he signed that lease in July 2001, just 6 weeks before the attack. Larry Silverstein and Bruce Mosler believe all is not lost with Donald Trump in the White House. This article was written by Benjamin Mazzara of BizNow, and it was published on November 10, 2016. I would just like to show you an excerpt from this article that proves Donald Trump and Larry Silverstein are indeed good friends, and they have been for a very long time. But Silverstein Properties Chairman Larry Silverstein and Cushman and Wakefield Global Brokerage Chairman Bruce Mosler, who have worked with the president-elect for decades, were optimistic, saying the market disruption would be short-term and that Trump may indeed be the best person for the job. Speaking to the bold crowd yesterday morning, Larry joked that his prognosticating skills obviously aren't the best, but said Trump can be highly focused and determined when he sets his mind to something that a good president needs. I'm on the Collins Dictionary website, and I'm going to read over a few terms, the first being domestic terrorism. Domestic terrorism just implies terrorism against people in one's own country. The next word is high treason. What does high treason mean? It means a very serious crime which involves putting your country or its head of state in danger. The third term is collusion. What does it mean? Collusion is secret or illegal cooperation, especially between countries or organizations. And the last term is insurance fraud. We know fraud means the crime of gaining money or financial benefits by a trick or by lying. In the case of insurance fraud, it involves insurance claims or insurance companies or the people who are being insured, or maybe even all three. There are more crimes I can think of. However, I don't want to explicitly search for these words online because the algorithms on YouTube will pick them up and immediately delete this video. So the other words I can think of are very case sensitive.
And then, fortunately, or unfortunately, you have your skin. You go to the dermatologist. Clara says to you, you got to go to the dermatologist on 9/11. You say, I'm not going to the dermatologist. I always go to the Windows of the World. That was a very fortuitous situation.
Well, business meetings, and that was my first obligation, was to negotiate leases with my tenants. But that morning, fortunately, she made the dermatologist appointment for me. I couldn't go, and she saved my life.
Go to the dermatologist, Clara.